Hello and welcome everyone to the first episode of our Smite Esports podcast. For now, it's going to be called Tuesday Night Smite because it happens on a Tuesday. And I'm here today with Sabo and Psycho, and we really want to talk about the first week of SPL play that happened last weekend. And I think the best place to start right here is with the EU side, because that is the side that happens earlier a bit. So, Psycho, Sabo, what were your highlights for EU sort of this weekend?
The biggest highlight for me was definitely the split between Enix and Obey. Enix picking up two new players, they actually managed to split. And the first game was taken in dominant fashion. The second one, not so much.
Yeah, they were both sort of pretty clear games. I thought, like
They were
Enix
pretty
was
sound.
right. I thought Enix and Obey both looked very convincing in the games that they won, but they just also didn't really have much of a chance in those they lost, at least from my point of view. But I'm not sure if I'm remembering incorrectly there.
Well, yeah, I agree. I mean, Enix, in the game that they won, they looked very dominant, very, on the same page. That's despite having two new players on their roster. Whereas Obey, the spring split champions, come in, everybody thought they were going to 2-0 Enix and get off to a good start. That was not the case. Enix was able to find a win in that first game. I don't want to say Obey was rusty or tired or whatever, because they were the spring split champions. They didn't have as long as a rest as everybody else, and that could play a factor. But it has been a couple of weeks since we've seen them play at the LAN. So Obey dropping that first game to Enix was a bit of a surprise. What was not a surprise to me was how Enix performed, because we know with players like Lobster and Funballer that the team's always going to be good. Can they make that early statement win, which I believe this was a statement win for them.
Yeah, I think so too. Like, I think that both individually as well, Lobster and Funball have stepped it up a bit compared to their split performances, at least in this first set we actually saw them in, or well, in the first two sets we saw them in. So I think this team is looking good for now, but I'm excited to see how they do in the rest of the split, because we still have some games ahead of us.
Well, you say that, and you're talking about Lobster and Funballer, but it was actually Fails who set up a lot for Lobster in the first game, and he was also a part of every single kill in their first game. They won 16-2, and
Yeah,
he was the player on the team.
Yeah, Fails was also really impressive in this set. Like, in both sets they played, in the second one obviously even a bit more because they got the 2-0 there. But in this set also he performed really well, I found. It's quite impressive for his sort of first week on Enix, the kind of performance he showed.
You kind of got the idea of what Phils was wanting to do earlier, like before he joined this roster. He just didn't have the players around him to really step up and have his ability show up. We look at Enix's last split with Cherio. Cherio's a good player in his own right, but he was brought onto the team to kind of take them to the next level that they hadn't been able to get to with their previous roster. It obviously didn't work out because they did bring in Fails, and Fails has proven, at least through the first week of play, that they made the right decision by replacing Cherio. Now, they also replaced Zelia with Ducky, their new solo laner. Ducky, to me, is kind of in that next breed of solo laner. I mean that by, Zelia kind of had that old fashion soul lane mentality where I'm just going to build this late game tank, and I'm going to, I'm going to be able to frontline for my team. Where this new breed of soul laner is, give me Bellona, give me Osiris, give me somebody who can, well, like the caster said, press W at you and just get in your face all game long. And I think that's what Ducky brings to this team that Exelia didn't bring.
Yeah, I think Salia himself is a very interesting player, or well, he used to be, because his best time sort of in Smite was never the one where the warriors were the really dominant gods in the meta. It was more with those sort of off-meta picks, and when you consistently had off-meta picks in the solo lane was when I thought he was the most dominant, and we haven't really seen that in the last metas for the last 2 years or so. So I think switching him out for someone who might be fundamentally a bit better at those standard picks, quote unquote, could be a good idea. And Ducky, I think, could be that kind of guy.
Well, I think it was a hard decision for Enix, since Xaylia was a really big asset of the team, being on it for a long time, alongside Lobster and Funballer. But as you said, his prime was on these assassin solo laners once upon a time. And that's not really happening right now.
Yeah, I think that's something that's also worth pointing out, that Salia has played with Funball and Lobster since, I think, Season 2, the start of Season 2. So, like, 2 entire seasons he's played with those same guys, and now they're replacing him. So they really tried to really get the most out of him. It just didn't really work.
Yeah, Xaylia had. Yeah, he had thrived on these assassins when the assassins were the quote unquote meta in the solo lane. But you also saw him, his performance weren't as impressive, but he didn't transition to the warrior meta, the tank meta, as well as some other solo laners did in EU. And that's not saying he didn't actually fit well with the team, because like you said, he has been playing with these guys for 2 years, and it just seemed like he wasn't catching up to where the meta was, and that's what was hurting Enix. Previously, they were Orbit. In my eyes, the weak link wasn't exactly Cubo Fred or Trixang. It was Exelia or Azalea.
Yeah, I think that's a fair assessment, honestly. Like, for me, I always expected Salia in those last 2 years, when he was on these Orbit, this roster, to kind of show the same performances he had during Season 1, when he was considered to be one of the best players in the world during the regular season. And he's never really shown that for me, because during Season 1 he was consistently dominant on different picks, and during the other seasons afterwards he really only had his standard picks that worked well for him but worked better for the other top solo laners, and he had those weird off-meta picks that only worked for him and only worked in like 70% of the cases really well.
Yeah, when you get your own play style in your picks, and you're not exactly playing the meta, that kind of dictates your team's picks and bans. Because if you're going to play, say, an assassin in the solo lane, your jungle's going to have to pick something different, or you're say it's a Ymir jungle. We know Cheerio had a Ymir jungle last split that he played a couple times with Xaylia in that solo lane. When you're playing these off meta picks, like I said, it dictates the team's picks and bans. And if your team is struggling, and I'll bring this up later when we talk to about Noble, because I want to talk about Skeledon and his off meta picks. But right now we're talking about Exelia, and it's just, you have to be able to play the meta well as a team first before you can do these weird off meta, jank picks that some of these teams like Eager are used to playing and that work for Eager.
Yeah, I think that's
going back to
Well,
Ilya and his teammates. He was actually a fun bowler since late 2014. So it's around 3 years, and they decided to part ways.
Oh yeah, Funballer was with him on, I think, what was that team
Fnatic.
called? Oh yeah,
And also Exposed Secrets.
yeah, Exposed Secrets, which then turned into some other
Into
name.
Fnatic.
Oh yeah, they turned into Fnatic at Regional Season 1. I remember that, where they bombed out gloriously.
Yeah.
No, but that's interesting. So he's actually played with him for 3 years. It's cool.
Talking about the off-meta picks, Dimi actually used to play the Chrono solo. Also in the old days. And
Well, Demi still plays Sun Wukong in the solo lane, and that's it's still a warrior, but that's Wukong hasn't been exactly meta for almost 2 years now. So, and we saw Demi play Wukong this past week against Rival, and that's what is my highlight of the week, is that Rival was able to split with energy. Yes, I know they took energy down at the Gauntlet LAN, and the energy hasn't exactly been the energy we're used to seeing. It was good. It was good for Rival to show that it was not just a run of luck that they were having; that they were actually this good.
the question is, was it actually Rival taking game off of Energy? Or Energy a game off of Rival?
Well, if
Because
you
they
look if you look at the way both games went, you see that Energy was like slowly building into a lead in both games. And what really turned game one around was the Fire Giant steal that Rival got, or well, I think they just burned the objective while Energy wasn't paying attention. And it was what really turned that game around for me, because Energy looked better in that game for me than Rival did. But after that, they got Fire Giant. They really were able to build a lead out of that, and Energy was just no longer able to fight into them.
I think Pete
got the first spot in both games. The first blood and first Gold Fury. But both Fire Giants going to Rival.
I think it's more important that we touch on the fact that Rival has now established themselves as a legitimate contender for one of those 4 spots at Dreamhack, rather than just somebody who got, a team that got lucky at the Gauntlet and got lucky at the Spring Masters LAN and beating Luminosity. I think what that game 1 win over Energy did was prove that we're still here. We are not a fluke team. We're actually this good. And that's what I'm trying to get at. That it was important for Rival to establish that.
Yeah,
about themselves.
Honestly, I saw Rival as a competing team for one of those spots when they got the win over LG and the win in the set. Like, I think they just won 1 game in the set against Obey at Masters. But that kind of solidified them to me as one of the teams that could play for one of those spots. Because they were able to compete with both of those teams, right? LG, who was, I think, the top seeded team out of NA. And
Eager too.
It was actually Eager.
Okay,
it was actually Eager.
So the second highest seeded team out of NA. and Obey, the highest seeded team in EU. And arguably the best team in the world right now. I think that already solidified them to me as one of these contenders for the Valencia spots. This here just further shows that to me, because they were able to compete against Energy, who's also one of those contenders. They're both kind of on the same level, I would say, right now. Energy maybe a tiny bit above them. But yeah, this is what it showed to me more so than solidifying them as a contender itself.
Don't forget that NRG recently picked up a coach, if I recall correctly. They didn't.
Yeah, Gorgonzola.
Yeah, they played without one for the start of season. Well, for the split, after Zeros left them for Dignitas, actually.
Yeah, I don't know if he's had that much of an impact yet. I haven't really been able to see it, but I think if we notice something as the split goes on, if he's actually having a large impact.
Well, we've since the start of season 4, that first loss to Obey that Energy suffered, everybody's been looking at them as some sort of like a ticking time bomb. Like, when are they going to wake up and go off and just dominate the league like they have the past 2 seasons? That hasn't happened yet. Energy is not Energy anymore. They're not scaring people anymore, and I think that's more because not so much that the meta has shifted in a different direction, but that the overall player, the performance of the players, and the ability and talent of the players that we have actually caught up to Energy. And without that aura around them that we're Energy, we're the team that's just going to come in and win, and you're not going to be able to stop us. Without that, I think it's much more wide open in EU than it used to be.
Yeah, I think we've sort of seen the start of this downfall pretty early on, right? Back at Worlds when Obey, for the first time in I think ever, was actually able to take a game off of Energy. Right, that's something you have to look at in those best of 5 series at LAN. I don't think an NAT, an EU team, was ever able to pick up a game against NRG in one of those sets, which Obey did at Worlds. And then you had the meta change at the start of Season 4, where the game got a lot more snowbally, and it kind of knocked Energy down a bit as well, because they always relied on getting to that mid game at about an even level and being able to outplay people there with the way they push towers and go for objectives. And I think overall it just shows you a bit that the main reason for Energy's falling for me has been the rest of EU picking up to them. That also is the same reason I see for why NA is lagging behind right now, because EU has just caught up to Energy's level and have exceeded them, some teams at least.
Well, when you get to play against the 2-time world champions week in and week out, you're going to force yourself to get better to play with their levels. NA has the unfortunate task of not having Energy in their region, and they don't have that dominant 2-time world champion to where they have to play better, so they have kind of lagged behind the EU as a result.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, you can't really say the Obey taking a game off of NRG at the Smite World Championship as an argument, because I think LG actually took them to Game 5, and at Smite Masters they fell to an EU team without picking up a game.
No, just it was just what I was seeing as the EU scene starting to catch up to Energy, that taking of the first game off at the SWC by Obey, right? And it has gone on a lot faster then, because obviously they went on to beat them in week 1 of the Spring Split, Obey versus Energy, and then later on to beat them at Masters itself. That was hard.
Was it a 3-0 at Masters? It was a 3-0, right? Obey beat them 3-0.
I think it was a 2-1. I think it was a best of 3 with a 2-1 to Obey.
Okay.
Which was actually also the first time since regionals in Season 2 that Energy lost a set. No, wait, that's wrong. Forget that.
No, the gauntlet. was the first time they lost the set. And that was
Yeah.
that was one to rival.
Was that a
That's what
set or was it a best of one? It was a set, right? Best of three as well.
was that guy set.
Looking at Smite Masters, it was a best of 3, and Obey defeated NRG 2-1, and then went on. Oh, I actually misspoke earlier. LG was taken down 2-1 by Rival, not 3-0. But it doesn't change much.
The second place team at the Spring Masters, Dignitas, has got off to a 4-0 start this week with 6 points. What do you guys see from? Did you like what you've seen, or was this them being so much better than their competition?
All the one game that Dignitas had was against Burrito, the Challenger Cup team, moving up to the SPL. And it, at least the first game was really stompy. Went 23-4 at the end. So Dignitas were really expected to win this set. Like the second best team in Europe, you can say. Fighting the Challenger Cup team. There wasn't really a different outcome. Against Elevate, though,
yeah,
might have been different.
I think both teams they played were not expected to beat Dig. Elevate might have taken a game off of them, but it was also not a guaranteed thing in my opinion. But I would rate Burrito as one of the bottom two teams in the SPL right now, simply because of their status as a challenger team coming up. Right, they have to lift themselves into the SPL, kind of adopt the mentality you have when you're playing in there. And I think Elevate's also not gonna really catch up to the teams above them, but I don't think they're gonna fall to those below them really hard. So I think they had two of the easiest possible teams they could have played in this week, but securing both 2-0s against them is obviously a good sign still.
Yeah, you see it all the time in traditional sports and in other esports. These teams that are favored to win dropping games to these teams that are not necessarily bad teams but aren't supposed to be able to compete, and that hurts these teams that are favored because they won't make their postseason as a result of it. Dig being able to get 2-0 in both sets when they were expected to win was actually quite huge for me, because it does give them a giant step ahead of the competition with already having 6 points in only a 5-week summer split.
Yeah.
So that should go a long way as securing their spot at Dreamhack in Valencia.
Yeah, and I think what's also worth mentioning, at least to me, is that they looked really solid in both of those sets. They were a bit over aggressive and they got punished for it a bit. But outside of that, just fundamentally, when you look at how they played the game, they looked really solid, really on point, I would say. And I have high hopes for this team because they're obviously a very skilled roster, right? If you look at QO Fred, who was arguably one of the best players on the old Orbit lineup, then you look at Variety, who was probably the best player of Obey at Worlds. It kind of there's a lot of things this roster promises you, and I hope to see that going on in the split.
Talking about rosters, and the first game that they played against Elevate, and Elevate recently picked up Nika as their jungler, and then proceeded also to split with the Pappies. Was it really just Nika not showing up?
Well, I think it played a role in that in their split with what was it, Pappies? Yeah, I think it played a role there because Nico looked like one of the worst players on the team in that result, and I think he has to kind of take some of the blame that comes with the split.
Well, let me start off by saying I like this Elevate roster. I think it has a good future ahead of it. Nika struggling this week, I think, is more due to the fact that he is the newest player on this roster. We haven't really seen him in jungle before, and his mid laner, they have to work out that synergy between those two positions. I think when they get that synergy worked out and that they start playing more and more as a team, I think you'll see them start taking games off of these teams like Enix and Rival and maybe even Dignitas and Obey. But right now, with such early on in the split, having a new roster, they're going to struggle. And their split with Poppies, let's start off by saying that first game where I believe they went 18-0 and they blanked the Poppies was a impressive performance. Really solid performance and really good sign of the future. At game 2, like I said, I see that more of the struggle between them not having that synergy. And you got to remember the Poppies are a team that have been through the Challenger Cup and been together for a very long time.
They did have some changes, but altogether they were around for about 3 years in the Challenger Cup. And now they finally made it in the SPL and picked up their first win.
Yeah, I think I'm not gonna say that I don't have hopes for this Elevate roster, right? Because I think they're also really solid. I just don't really see them catching up to the top 5 in EU right now, because just purely from the name power these rosters have behind them, I would rate the average player on a team like Enix, Energy, Rival, etc. a bit above the average name power on Elevate. And so they really need to work on the synergy between Nika and Alyssa and Nika and the rest of the team if they actually want to catch up, because that lack of name power needs to be made up for in synergy, I think.
Well, you got the Bruise Brothers duo lane. They've been together for a long time. Nulissa recently rejoined this roster. Nika's new. No numbers. We've seen him time in a couple of games here and there in the SPL. It's a solid roster, like you said. I'm excited for it. I'm excited to see what they can do in the future as they work the synergy out. Yes, they dropped 2 games to Dig at the start of the week, but that was Dig's obviously one of the top teams, and they didn't exactly look bad in that matchup against Dig. They were able to find success in the mid game around these mid game team fights. They did. I believe they got Gold Fury first. Yeah, they got Gold Fury first in game 1. So they were able to get these mid-game team fights and take these mid-game team fights from Dig. So that's a good sign for the future that it's not just, it's not all doom and gloom for this roster, that they've got potential.
Well, you say the first Gold Fury, but it actually happened at around 25 minutes, with Dignitas picking up the first Fire Giant 2 minutes later. So, can you really call that winning the fights in this particular game?
Yeah, I think I would attribute them winning, them getting picks or getting kills more to Dig generally overextending a bit than them actually really working hard for them, as rough as that sounds.
Well, let's just agree to disagree. We'll see where they are at in the fall. I'm hoping the fall, with a little bit more time under their belts and as a team, that they'll do better. I don't really expect them to be a contender for Dreamhack.
Yeah.
But in the fall, if they if they make it to Super Regionals in the fall, I wouldn't be surprised.
Yeah, I could see that happening, but I'm still a bit doubtful because of how strong the 5 rosters above them that I would rate above them are right now in EU. But I could see it happening if they improve like drastically. Still, like, it's kind of telling as well to me that we're kind of writing them off for the summer already after 1 week.
Now they should definitely stick together and see how the synergy works out when Nika finds his place on the team. And we will see how they will perform in fall. Or even in the later stages of the summer split, who knows?
Yeah, and I think what's worth talking about as well is how the new teams made their entrance into the SPL. We've kind of touched on it quite a lot already with the Puppies and with Burrito, but we obviously have two challenger teams coming into the SPL and EU this time for the summer split, and they both had their first 2 and 1 game respectively this week. So what did we see out of them? What kind of tells can we get from their performances this week?
Well, Burrito obviously falling 2-0 to Dignitas. But we kind of talked about that, and it wasn't really a surprise, with Dignitas being one of the top teams in Europe. But the Pappies, also, we didn't really talk about them as much. But they fell 2-0 to Enix, which I think is one of the best teams in Europe as well now. And split with Elevate. Talk about now.
Poppies has that name power. Warchi, their hunter, is pretty well known in the throughout the community as a streamer on YouTube, and we've been able we get the first look at him in the Pro League. Funballer kind of had his way with him early on. Was able to. I think he played Cupid both games. Am I right?
I need to check real quick.
Yeah.
Yeah, he played
Funballer
Cupid
was
both games.
Funballer was able to have success against him. Elevate's Hunter, on the other hand, I mean, what else can you say? Game 1 from Elevate was amazing, and Jermaine was a big part of that. But Game 2, Warchi found success, found a good was able to lead his team to a win. I see him as, I don't want to say he's the leader of the team, because we don't know what's happening in comms, but he is the player that's most well known. And as far as Burrito goes, Death Panther in the mid lane, dropping 2-0 to Dignitas. We've touched on it time again. It's not very much a big surprise. I think these two teams they're going to be at the bottom looking up as far as standing goes because of how talented the rest of EU is. The Poppies finding a win against Elevate, I think, was more due to the fact that Elevate hasn't had that time together, especially Nika and the rest of the team, than it was the Poppies actually having a good game, having a good enough team to beat Elevate. Yeah. So I see them struggling. I'm predicting that these two will be the representatives in the next gauntlet, or not the next gauntlet, but the next relegations for EU.
Yeah, I could see that happening. What I found interesting, if you look at Warchi, this week, he had a tall task ahead of him in lane because Funball and Tremaine are both hunters that I would rate very highly among EU hunters. So it was kind of rough for him to be put up against those two just right at the start of the SPL when he's not really used to that level of play yet, I think. And just having to go against them in lane when they are both so good.
I do want to shout out to Hindu Man on that Draco Malfoy reference.
Oh yeah.
The Harry Potter reference he made. That was pretty funny. But obviously it's Draco Marino, the support for Poppies, Jokes aside, they're definitely going to struggle this split.
It might be a good learning experience for them. Even for Archie being matched up against those great hunters. They really didn't have that level of competition in the Challenger Cup. So we might see them picking up the pace during the split, throughout the split. And maybe they'll step up.
Yeah, that is something I expect to see during the split is just both of these Challenger Cup teams kind of getting closer in the level to a team like Elevate, which is kind of a bad comparison because they already beat Elevate in one game. But that's what I expect to see, is them getting better because of the higher level of competition that they're facing now. Because
and as long as you're getting better, you got a potential for the future, right? As long as you're getting better every game, you'll see results later on in the split.
Yeah, hopefully. Well, if they manage to get through relegations, assuming they're gonna go for the fall split, then I think they should have a better chance there than they have right now, because they're no longer going to be rookies, right? Which is kind of a disadvantage when you go into an SPL split as a rookie.
And yeah, your rookie split's always your toughest one. We'll see. Eager's new jungler, Sam for Soccer's going through his rookie split as well. We'll talk about him a little bit later, but if you guys are ready to jump over to NA.
Yes, I was just going to ask if there's anything you guys still want to talk about on the EU side, or do we want to go over to the NA side now?
No, I don't think I have anything to talk about. Or you?
I'm in A. I'm ready to talk about NA anytime in the week.
Yeah. Okay, Sabo, then you can start right now by telling us about NA, whatever you want.
Biggest highlight of the week was ALG's reemergence, especially Psychospin's reemergence. A lot of people are going to watch the VODs and look back at their two games this week. A split with LG and just a beat down of Flashpoint, and say that Weekend and Niruma really drove that. But for me, it was clearly Psychospin's reemergence, because a lot like Zelia, he had found his ultimate success previously on these assassin solo laners, and that's where he kind of made his name, and he didn't really transition all that well to the tanky meta. This week puts all of that to bed. I think with his performances this week, he was able to silence a lot of the talk about him not being able to play these tanky solo laners. Bologna, his game one against LG on Bologna on Thursday, they could have realistically 2-0'd LG with how they started that game one. Game two on Hercules, I saw him time and time again walk into 4 or 5 people on LG and just take everything. Not take towers, but take all the abilities that LG had and just walk away laughing. And they've made points about how Raffer on Energy would purposely walk into 5, get everybody to burn their abilities on him, and then Energy would clean it up. That's exactly what Cyclone Spin did this past week against LG. And then just the beat down of Flashpoint speaks for itself. To me, you can give Weekend credit for what he was able to do, but Cyclone Spin was really, really the guy who made it all happen for ALG this week.
Yeah, I think that's fair to say. The entire LG roster, I've said it before, I think to you guys as well, is the way they played this week. I had fucking flashbacks to Season 2 AFK Gaming. This is the type of playstyle that we saw from them, except for the different picks, of course, because we're seeing exclusively Warrior solo this time around. But it really reminded me because of how their compositions were built specifically against Flashpoint, and because of how their playstyle was.
I mean, Cyclone Spin was really my favorite player since the old AFK days. Just really, even if you just watch him streaming, he really has a different playstyle, and he's really showing it in the SPL. He actually had only 6 deaths in the 4 games they played, and they even lost one of them. So it's just really, he walked into 5 and still had only 6 deaths throughout 4 games.
Yeah, that's crazy.
Really, even on those tanky solo laners.
Even in the one game that they lost to LG, that they had started something 6-0 and had the first Gold Fury within 10 minutes. Hold on, let's see. Oh, yeah, first 10 minutes in game 2, the game that they won, they took it at 9, just before the 10-minute mark. So they, against LG, a Luminosity, a team that is favored to be top 3 in A, maybe even top team, for ALG to come in and say, we're a good team as well. We're going to be one of those Dreamhack spots for ours, which after this week's performance, I actually believe that Allegiance will make it to Dreamhack. But to be able to come in and split with Luminosity on Thursday was a big step forward, because many people thought they would only have the 3 points from beating Flashpoint. Now they're at 4 points in the standings because they actually were able to split with Luminosity.
Yeah, I think that's the important part of the split is the opponent it was against, because it really puts them in a good position to actually make it to Dreamhack. Because it's not just that they got 1 more point that they should have had, realistically. It's also that one of their direct opponents for this Dreamhack spot is going to have 2 points less than they should have had.
Yeah, well, moving on, and we're going to talk about the Luminosity side of things. I mean, Luminosity did find 4 points this week as well. They did, like we said, they split with Allegiance. They were able to find a 2-0 over Noble. Where they really struggled at was Gary D. Both games against Hercules. I know Aquarius played Hercules once, and then Cyclone Spin was able to find a win on Hercules against them. Well, to me, it was Scary D struggling against the Hercules pick alone.
Yeah, I
saw his.
I was just reminded of what Efdal was saying about this set in the short video he made, where he didn't call it Luminosity against Noble, he called it Luminosity against Aquarius.
Yeah, That's Aquarius was the highlight of Noble for me this week. Not only on his Hercules game, but on his game 2 performance as well. He was really the only bright spot for Noble this week. And LG, like I said, LG struggled against Hercules, the Hercules pick in particular, for some unknown reason. Scary D just did not have an answer for the Hercules pick. We saw Cyclone Spin and Aquarius find really good success against him on that pick. I believe both times getting first blood on him. I know Aquarius picked up first blood on Hercules against Scary D. What a play that was. The driving strike into the tower and the boulder. I mean, realistically, Aquarius could have farmed Scary D in that game 1 and found relatively good success.
I think
But
it's...
talking about reasons why LG was losing some of these games, but what about the other side? Why they were winning these games? With Barracuda and Baskin showing up beautifully in both games.
Yeah, what I wanted to talk about really quickly first is Scary D specifically again, because one thing that I think we can hold him highly for is how, even though he got dominated in lane by Aquarius in that game 1 against Noble, he still had a very big impact in team fights, I thought, and in these little skirmishes, like 3v3s, despite how far behind he was, which I thought was pretty impressive as well.
The response, you can start out bad. We know from my own personal play, you can start out bad. It's how you respond to it. And he responded great. I mean, he was able to find success later on when they started these team fights. I mean, ALG, the game 2 against ALG, I brought up the fact that Cyclone was walking into multiple characters by himself and getting everything. Well, Scary D did the exact same thing on Bologna. He was able to pick up 2 kills around a Gold Fury where he was basically alone. And so it was all about the response. He responded well. ALG or Luminosity was able to find wins. Talking about Barracuda and Baskin, you kind of expect that from Barracuda now. Baskin, even though he has only started his second split in the mid lane, is still one of the mechanically gifted players in the league. So it's not surprising to me that he did so well. Barracuda, of course, got week 1's MVP from the official Smite Pro League website. But to me, it was more the response from Scary D. I know I've been critical of him for a long time now. He had a great performance at Worlds. Before the Worlds, he was really seen as a weak link, and I think he was in. Without that Worlds performance, he was in jeopardy of getting replaced, and I think that Baskin was going to be his replacement if he didn't perform so well at Worlds.
Yeah, I could see that as a potential roster. Like if Scary D hadn't stepped up, I could have definitely seen the possibility of Basking taking over his spot, and them keeping, I think, Xenotronics it was in mid.
I don't think they were keeping Xenotronics one way or the other. I think it was more that if Scary D and Xenotronics didn't step up at Worlds, that they were both going to replace. Xenotronics really didn't have a good performance at Worlds. Scary D did. Scary D was able to keep his roster spot. And Baskin was brought in to play mid as a backup. You know, not saying backup to the mid role, but if Scary D hadn't kept that performance going and play like he did in the spring split, that Baskin was going to replace him in the summer split, and that they were going to find a new mid laner for the summer split.
Well, the thing that comes up when you say Scary to me is Rasu. He's not really known for these early game gods, or gods like Hercules that just go in and smash your face in. But he farms for the late game and then he's there for the team. It wasn't really a surprise for me that he struggled against the two Hercules picks, because he's not really used to that playstyle, I think.
Yeah, I think that makes some sense, right? Him preferring the late game based gods as a player who's historically kind of always been better late game than he was in the early mid game.
Yeah, he also had, in one of those performances against Hercules, he also was on a Bologna solo lane, and we know Bologna is top pick right now. So for him to struggle against Hercules on a Bologna, that is kind of indicative to me about where teams are going to prioritize Hercules against them, because until he proves that he can handle it in lane, even with the best solo laner in the game right now, they're just going to keep picking it.
Yeah, I think that's something that LG has to look out for is the Hercules, just in general, because if you have other good solo laners being able to play him on a high level, he's gonna struggle against those as well. I think if Scary D doesn't fix his issues against him in that regard. Because if you can force LG into banning a Herc instead of one of the other top picks around right now, just because Scary D can't handle him, you're putting yourself in trouble as a team.
Well, we have seen those teams prioritizing the second pick. Hearing you talking about the top picks right now. So I don't really think it would matter that much if LG decided to ban Hercules. Of course, it would be really not the best thing you can do, just because there's so lane can't play against it. But it wouldn't be the worst thing in the world either.
Yeah, the worst thing.
The servers open. They actually had a 100% participation in this week, be it a pick or a ban.
From Bologna and Osiris? Or from which gods?
For the solo lines. And then also for Fafnir and Terra in the support role.
Yeah, that kind of shows you what the top picks are right now, and it kind of shows you that. To me, it shows also a bit that these two positions, solo and support, might be a bit more stale than the other roles we have in the game right now.
I don't see them as being so much as stale as some picks being above the other picks in that role. I mean, obviously Ganesh wasn't available this week, but I would imagine he would be a top pick, or at least a top ban, because teams haven't had a chance to play against him yet, or scrim necessarily a lot of stuff against him yet. But Fafnir and Terra, they both bring, especially from Terra, she brings so much to the team that, Terra's not necessarily a ban from the support side. She's also a ban from the solo side. You don't want to give teams Fafnir where he can just buff his hunter late game, and his hunter can chew through a tower in 4 seconds. You don't want to give Fafnir up. Bologna and Osiris being top picks in the solo lane right now, to me, just says pressure. You want pressure in that solo lane. You want to be able to rotate early. You want to be able to be a nuisance to the mid lane. You get that from them where you don't get that from other warriors like a Wukong, like a Chaac, like a Hercules. other in other weird news, Skeledon for Noble, his game against LG at Luminosity, he played Hebo jungle. We found he had success at the Gauntlet with these Changas, with these Hebos, with these Thors in the jungle. Not so much this week. His overall KDA, or his overall stats for this week, his /line is 1, 9, and 2. Do we see this being the same old Skeledon, or do we see this just as a week 1 type thing?
It might be again because he's a new asset to the team. He was on SPL Gatekeepers, if I remember correctly.
Yes, Oxygen Supremacy they were known as Oxygen Supremacy at the Gauntlet, but yes, it's SPL Gatekeepers.
Yeah, so anyway, he was picked up by Noble. And again, this was his first real SPL game with the new team, really. So it's to be expected he won't play his best this early in the split. We can even compare it to Mika on the EU side.
Yeah, I wouldn't take too much out of those two games just yet, because he's new to the team. It might work if they manage to build their team comps a bit better around him. I think then his picks can prove to be more of an asset than they were against LG. But I don't expect miracles out of Skeledon, obviously, because he's just never shown to really be able to work miracles yet. So I think he's going to turn into a more solid jungler as the split goes on. But I don't think he's going to be anything more by the end of the split, honestly.
Yeah, the roster has some talent on it. Aquarius, we've said MLC Stealth, of course. We all know his track record, Season 1 World Champion. Wowie and Lubin, good duo lane, good solid duo lane. Skeledon's the new guy to the team. To me, it was, you don't pick these weird junglers until you had more success as a team. We know Captain Twig in the spring had some success on Hebo jungle. We know DJ Pernicus with his Aphrodite jungle at the Spring Masters LAN had success. But they were on established teams that had found success previously. And I bring up Zelia again. If you're going to play these weird picks, have success as a team before you bring this out. Before you try something janky. And Noble just hasn't had that success yet. Skeledon hasn't had the most impressive performances in the SPL on his prior teams. Envious or I believe he played for Denial early last season.
Not entirely sure.
He hasn't had that standout performance that we've all been looking for from him. Noble is not that he has not had enough practice or play time with Noble to be able to find success with anything like that. The team comp itself, the Chiron mid, the casters said it over and over again that theoretically the team comp would work. Well, yes, in theory it will work, but in theory on a team that has found relative success, in my opinion.
Yeah, I think there's two ways you can look at those sort of jank picks that you can throw out. One is from the lens that you're a really solid team. The opponent's going to know how you play. They can prepare for your normal picks. So it's good to have these jank picks in your backhand to surprise them and upset them that way, or to guarantee your victory that way. The other way I think you can look at it is when you are clearly the underdog team in a matchup, it can be a good idea to bring out a pick like a Hebo jungle that they aren't going to expect, because again, there's a surprise factor there. If they have been looking at your normal picks that you usually run, which obviously won't be the case with Noble, because Skeleton's a new player, but if they have been looking at that, they won't have necessarily the time to pay too much attention to one of these lower end teams to really learn all of their pick and ban strategy in and out. They have to divert their attention a bit elsewhere. So bringing out a pick that they're not used to, that they don't know how you're going to actually play it because you've only rarely done it, could give you an advantage in a matchup that you're otherwise disadvantaged in.
Yeah, I hear what you're saying, but I'm also thinking Mike the Magikarp in Give Jungle. And this is yeah, Skeleton, new to the team hasn't found a lot of success. Wait before you pull out the jank picks. Another huge point in the NA is, well, it's life after Pain to Beyond for E United. If you didn't, maybe you didn't know, if you're listening to this, Pain Divion is no longer on E United. He has been replaced with Polar Bear Mike. They found a split with Gabe. Gabe added a new solo laner this week. Well, not so new as in player you don't know, but is new to the team. Kiki Sochiki joined Gabe this week, and like I said, they found a split. What did we think of Life After Pain?
Well, I didn't think E United looked bad. I think they looked pretty solid for kind of up. They were kind of playing up to the level that I was expecting them to, which is a fairly solid roster. They were in both games, right? They obviously won the first game pretty heavily, and they had a lot of even team fights and a lot of chances to come back into the game in the second one. So I wasn't disappointed with their performance, but I think we need to see more from PBM and from how the rest of the roster synergizes with him before we can really make a prediction as to how the life after Pain is going to be for them.
Well, it was both teams, as you said, had new players on them, but the synergy, again, as I said many times, might still get better as the split goes on. But the split, actually, I think game one went to E United in a pretty, they had a pretty comfortable lead, and in the second one they still had a chance. They took it to like 45 minutes. Yeah, to around 45 minutes. They aren't by any means a bad team now that the Pain to Beyond is gone.
Yeah, I was kind of critical on the fact that they removed Pain to Beyond. There were rumors that Verizio was going to be the one replaced, and that Pain was going to be able to keep his spot. Ultimately, I think that it is easier to replace a support than it is a jungle, because of the play style and what the effect that the jungle has on so much of what the teams want to do. We know Pain was considered the general because he made a lot of these shot calls, these snuck gold furies, these so many things that we're used to seeing from enemy, now E United, that we kind of overlooked what Verizio brought to the team. And I believe PBM ultimately will be a good replacement. And not saying that he's better than Pain. I'm saying that with how the team operates now and how Verizio has so much responsibility in what he does for the team, will ultimately be better. We know we saw Bastet and Hunbats. His Bastet performance was better than his Hunbats was, but what he was able to do for the team ultimately makes him more valuable to the team than Payne Dibiad was.
Well, you did say that it is easier to find a support than a jungler, but it isn't really a valid point when it comes to United, just because Payne, as you also said, was known as the general. So it might just be the lack of a dedicated shot caller on the team right now. So once they work that out, they might get much better.
Yeah, I think the only reason why replacing the jungler, the support was easier than the jungler right now is because PBM was available, right? Because PBM is obviously a very good player. Don't think there's anyone who's really questioning that. He's been considered a pretty good player ever since he was on Eager, I think, during season 2, where they unfortunately didn't manage to make it to Worlds, but just barely. And so I don't think it's necessarily that Payne was less of an asset to the team. I think you've mentioned this before as well, Sabo, but rather that they thought it would be easier to replace him with PBM than it would be to replace Veriziel with a random ranked jungler.
I just want to clear up that I'm in no way trying to say PBM is a bad player. PBM has been through the trials and tribulations of the SPL. We've seen him, rookie split. He was on Eager. They didn't make it to Worlds, but the team was good. Had some great leadership in Zapman, Lassus, Omega, and then last season, season 3, he's on the Rendozos for the spring split. That we know team didn't have success, even though the players would suggest that they had success, because Walrus has found success on other teams. Scary D has found success on other teams. Skeledon was on that team. All three are good players in their own rights. For some reason, that roster didn't work out, but PBM was able to find a spot next to Oceans on Envious for the fall split, or at least at least up until the gauntlet, where he, Psycho Spin, and Oceans did join Weekend and Stealth. On Allegiance, they found success. Obviously they made it to Worlds, fell to Energy.
Didn't they also lose to the LATAM team?
They did. I think it was licked.
Yeah, they lost to the Latin team. But my point is, PBM has been through a lot. He has proven that he is a good player and that he can play for a team that has as much talent as EU United has. As far as availability goes, yes, he was available. But there were some junglers out there available. And I'm not saying that their replacement of Payne with him was because that Veriziel was so much more important, or that Payne was so less important. Payne had a huge personality. Let's put it that way. We know Payne's personality didn't mesh well with some of the other players in the league, and that's probably why they could not find a suitable jungler for them. That's probably not the sole reason, but that's probably one of the big reasons. And so for Payne to get replaced with PBM and for Rizziel to come back to the team ultimately makes this a stronger roster, because I don't see them able to get a jungler as strong as Veriziel from the ranked pool. or from the Challenger Cup pool.
Yeah, I can agree with that, honestly. So I think something we can touch upon a bit more is Flashpoint. Because Flashpoint, obviously, they are a almost completely new team. They have 2 members coming back from last split, which are Shadowq and Mirage, their support and their jungler. The rest of the team has been filled with, let's just call them Challenger Cup players, basically. So, Flashpoint, they also played their first 2 games this week, and, well, what happened in those?
It's
Well,
just not a very
it's not.
it's not a very good roster. I mean, they, like you said, they're Challenger Cup players. They have found success in Challenger Cup as a I don't know if they played together before, but they each have found success in the Challenger Cup level. I just don't think DM Brandon made a point of saying that not necessarily that his Juice Gaming squad could beat this current Flashpoint squad, but the name power is not there. And your solo laners like Dante Lafargo, you got Sheikah, you got Sobs, all good players, but not really known to the SPL. Not really. They're rookies, of course. They're going to struggle. But look at what you're replacing. Aquarius. I think Aquarius was one of the bright points for Flashpoint in the spring split. Why Shadowq decided to get rid of Aquarius, I have no idea. Xenotronics playing Hunter for them in the spring. In my opinion, Xenotronics was one of the top hunters last split, despite their losing record. Incon, we know his resume speaks for himself. He's one of the most liked figures in the community. I don't agree necessarily with Shadowq kicking Xeno or Aquarius. If he was going to remove somebody from last split, it should have just been Incon. But this current roster, I don't think they're very good, and I think they're probably the worst team in the league right now. That is even across the entire league. Burrito, I believe Burrito's better than Flashpoint right now.
Yeah, I can
I
see
actually did
that.
I don't mean to be critical of anybody. I mean, they're all getting paid, play the game. They're loads better than me. It's compared to what we're used to seeing, compared to the talent level of the rest of the SPL. I just do not think these rookies on Flashpoint are up to par. And I would go as far as saying that Shadowq's time has passed, and that he's better off now as a coach than an actual player.
Yeah, I think you might have a point there. Like if we're gonna be harsh with Flashpoint, I think something that we can say with relative certainty, or at least that I think is gonna be the case, is that they will not win a game this split. I do not see them winning a game.
If they catch Noble at the right time, I think there's a split with Noble, but Noble's roster is by far and away better than this Flashpoint roster.
Yeah, I have to defend Flashpoint. I don't think they are the Sanguine of North America. I think they do have some potential to pick up, well, at least a game.
Yeah, but Sanguine had potential as well. They just didn't make anything with it.
Fair point.
And I do not see this Flashpoint roster making anything of their potential, honestly. Because for what we've seen in their first 2 sets, that was terrible. Right? Just look at their second game against Allegiance. That game lasted 25 minutes. Allegiance got 32 kills.
Well, I will say this about Flashpoint in a positive light. Game 1 against Monkey Madness was much closer than I expected. I don't know if that was to Flashpoint playing at their best, or if it was just Monkey Madness not, it being the beginning of the split and Monkey Madness not really being warmed up. Because we saw what Monkey Madness did in Game 2 against Flashpoint, which was a laugher, to say the least. But, like, that 27-5 in Game 2, it was a laugh. The game was over well before it even got started. Game 1, much closer, 11-22. Monkey Madness didn't really run away with that one. And so, to me, I don't know. I have to ask you the question: was it Monkey Madness not being warmed up, or was it Flashpoint playing up to their potential?
Well, I think when you consider that Sheikah got first blood on Andinster in that game, the first one, I think, it kind of tells you. Kind of shows to me that MM were not prepared going into that match, I think, and they really need that warm-up period probably. And otherwise, it could just be that they are also not used, that they were also just not in this SPL spirit right now. I don't know, honestly. I can't tell you.
I did talk about this game when we were just casually chatting about it. It was just both teams did a lot of mistakes. I really want Flashpoint to win some games. But it is true that the first game, the closer one against Monkey Madness, was just both teams not playing that well, rather than Flashpoint playing great.
Well, speaking of Monkey Madness, I mean, they starts the week off with Flashpoint, and then they go into a set with Eager, welcoming a new jungle, Sam for Soccer. Monkey Madness completely dominated Game 1. I believe Eager only picked up 1 kill in that game. 15-1. Sam played Thor. What's your impressions of this guy? I mean, I know we've seen him in the AVGL and some of the other leagues like the Challenger circuit, but this was really his first game in the SPL with a well-established roster. Was that first game just nerves, or was it just something else?
It wasn't just one player. It was just the entire Eager. Just, I don't even think they had a good draft. They just got beat in every possible thing the first game. Just seeing the Susano being left open for Homie FA.
Yeah.
And there's not much to say, but I don't think we can judge Sam for Soccer just by his first SPL showing.
Yeah,
It's
I
actually
think
just, and also replacing such a seasoned player as BJ Pernigas.
Yeah, I think the first game, I've expressed this opinion to you guys before as well, was more down to that one massive mistake Eager made in the mid lane early on, where they got where they went for first blood, I think, and then
Yeah, they get.
they got
Random
first
pick.
blood and no kill afterwards, because then after first blood, 4 of them died because they got flanked very strongly, or just a brilliant flank by Homie Effie and someone else. I'm not sure exactly who it was. I think
It was actually
Vicium. I
the
think
Omen.
yeah. So I think Vicium and Homie Effie ended up flanking them in the mid lane. They kind of pincered them in the entire Eagle roster between both fronts of the remaining Monkey Madness players, and got 4-man Susanoo ultimate off on 4 people, and it was just no way that Eager would manage to recover from that, right? Because this one fight just started a snowball for Monkey Madness, and I think that snowball carried them on for the rest of the game and brought them the victory.
Yeah, it was. I talked earlier about it's not necessarily how you start, it's the response that you have. And Eager picks up first blood. Homie FA immediately responds with a triple kill, and it just snowballs from there. wins 15-1. But in game 2, Eager looks much more polished. Sam looks much more comfortable on the Erlong Shin jungle than he did on Thor. Eager is much more willing to fight over these objectives and control these objectives than they were in the first game, where they would just let Monkey Madness take everything with no response.
Yeah, they just had no way to fight into a fat Susanoo at that point, right? So they got all their jungle stolen, they got all objectives stolen, or just completed without them having a chance to really do anything about it. The first game, I think it was entirely down to Snowball. The second game wasn't, which was why it was a lot closer.
Yeah, I think we can give Sam a pass for that first game, because it was, in fact, the whole team that struggled. Looked a lot better in the second game. As he moves forward in the split, and hopefully if we get to see him in the fall split as well, I see some good things from him. The only question for me is he going to stay on Eager, or will he move on? And it's kind of premature to say this, with it only being the first set of his SPL career, but like, Eager has its own meta. The quote unquote Eager meta was driven so much by what DJ Pernicus was able to play in that jungle, which freed up Divios to play what he wanted to play, freed up Aurora to play some of these warriors in the support role that you don't normally see. My only concern is Sam going to be able to not so much duplicate what DJ did, but bring his own style into the Eager meta, and can they find success with that new style?
Yeah, I think something good that I saw with Sam was just how he came back in game 2 after how terribly they lost the first one. Because when you lose a game like that, right, it can be hard to keep up your own spirit to come back into the second game stronger, and that's exactly what Sam did, which is something I give him high praise for right now as a new player
Yeah.
in the league. Yeah,
I think in North America, we call that having a quarterback's memory. In our version of football, a quarterback, if he throws an interception, you got to come back out in the next series and keep playing. And so that's what we hope Sam has, is that quarterback memory, that he can put a bad game behind him and then come out and perform in the second half.
Yeah, I
But
think
going
that's. Go ahead.
to the deciding is really deciding how Eager will play. It also seemed like they won and lost depending on how DJ was doing. We going back to Masters, we saw him on that Aphrodite jungle. It really worked out for him, and they won the game. But then the Guanyu came out. DJ didn't perform well, and Eagle lost. So it's really, will Sam bring as much as DJ did when he was showing up in these games?
Yeah, I think
Or
the
will
way
the rest of Eagle have to adapt to Sam's style?
Yeah, I think they will have to some extent, right? I think they're gonna be more playing the meta picks now. At least I expect them to. And I don't know if that's necessarily a bad thing, honestly, because what I expect from Sam as compared to someone like DJ, I got confused a bit there. Compared to someone like DJ, is that he might be able to play those meta picks slightly better than DJ did, because DJ was just a more cerebral player than him, from what I know. And I think the meta picks that might be require a bit less thinking, a bit more mechanical skill purely, might fit Sam a bit more, and it might fit Eager a bit more if they decide to change their playstyle a bit and change their drafts a bit, and it might fit them more as well against EU competition.
Yeah, that's the goal, right? Is get NA back to being on top, or at least being able to compete with the EU teams. I mean, that should be the goal for every NA team after what we saw at the Masters, where EU pretty much ran away with the entire thing. I think the only team to find a win was LG against Rival, where Rival beat them 2-1. The only other matchup, Dig sweeps Soar, now Monkey Magnus, and Diggs also sweeps Eager. So to get back to find a meta that is successful for NA, not only on a league scale but on an international scale, should be the goal. And going back to Eager, if they can not necessarily not play their own style, but to kind of get into a more traditional meta that, as we see it as fans, I think is ultimately going to help them on an international level, because that should be the goal right now for NA as a whole, is to get better at an international level.
Yeah, I think playing better around those standard team comps should help Eager, just because they have something to rely on internationally, like a strong backbone for their drafts, being able to play standard team comps that everyone else can play as well to a higher level than them potentially, while still having some back pocket picks available to them. That's just the way I would like to see Eager draft and Eager to build their team comps, honestly.
Well, if
Yeah,
Sam
something a
can,
little bit.
Sam can play the off-meta picks like DJ could, there won't be much choice, to be honest.
Let's just we've seen Sam play Thor, and we've seen Sam play Erlang Shem. Let's next week, we'll readdress this next week and see what our impressions of it when we see a little bit more from him. But for now, let's just say Eager. Let's put a question mark beside Eager and come back to them, because we don't know. Because Eager's always that will they or won't they team. Will they play these weird stuff, or will they play the meta? And so I want to hold off on judging Sam right away after just the one set.
Yeah, I think that's reasonable. So Is there anything else you guys want to talk about when it comes to the NA region as a whole?
I'd actually like to. We didn't really touch this, but in memory of Gabe, also picking up a SPL Gatekeepers player. Like
I
you
think we
mentioned,
mentioned it, but we didn't
Oh, yeah.
really go into it.
get into detail about it. With in memory of Gabe, actually, I think they split.
Yeah, they split with E United.
Yeah, and he was not really showing up as I expected him to, from his time on Oxygen Supremacy in the Gauntlet. What do you think about his performance on his new team?
Well, I think he didn't look too good in the first game against the United, obviously, as his slash line also shows. I think the second one was obviously much better. I also think these kind of more utility-based picks fit him a bit more. So something like an Athena over an Erlong. I prefer to see Kiki on these type of picks, honestly, especially against stronger opposition, right? If you're looking at the Gauntlet, or if you're looking at relegations, you might be able to have more success with the picks that don't necessarily fit your playstyle and don't necessarily you are the best on compared to the top level of SPL teams. But I think his role as a utility solo laner would be much better for him.
I agree. The utility picks should be Kiki's bread and butter. We know this week he played against Benji. Benji's one of the top solo laners in all of NA and even the world. Matchups against Cyclone Spin and Divios will come later. Scary D, obviously, we've talked about. I want to see Kiki against these players and with these utility picks. He found success on Athena. Sino sure had a big game in game number 2. 10 wins, I think, or 10 kills, 4 deaths, I think, was what his stat line was.
His season was actually 10-1.
10-1, okay. Yes. Well, either way, Sino sure had a huge game in game number 2 with Kiki on that Athena. And that Athena solo is a utility pick, like Roby said. So I think Kiki, until he has established himself more as an SPL solo laner, because we know that's where he started out. He was originally a solo laner before moving to mid, and then he's played he went to support for Envious last season before moving to the solo lane again, and so he's been there ever since. But he hasn't had that competition that we're used to seeing from the solo laners in North America. Benji is at Divios, Sino, Scary D, these are top solo laners. And until we see him have success against these other solo laners, I think the utility picks is where he needs to stay and let his teammates shine and let him set up for his teammates.
In the second game as well, we saw Hurwind on a Kukulkan. We haven't seen that in the SPL for a long time. But now with having Kiki so cheeky and Sinosure having set up for his huge Spirit of the 9 wins, that's what really, I think Kiki carried some support spirit back to the solo lane, and it really kind of showed in the second game.
Yeah, I think that's a type of team comp that can work for IMOG. is putting Kiki on a high CC solo laner that can still realistically have success in lane, and then just putting her even on one of those massive burst mages that require a lot of setup, like a Kukulkan, because I see those two as having that type of role, right? Hervind, I think, will function best if he has a lot of peel, if he has a lot of setup, and Kiki, I think, will function best if he's the setup man instead of the bruiser or the really damage dealer.
We saw this from him when he was on Envious or AFK. These mid lane picks like these Aphrodites and these Changas that are set up picks for somebody like Cyclone in the solo lane or Weekend in the jungle. We saw him thrive on these setup picks, and that is where I want to see him with these utility picks like Athena. Set up for your teammates, because I believe that's what Kiki does best, and I believe that's what he should build on with this current team. Because you got players like Herwin and Snoopy and Shinoshirt that can all go off and carry a game. Just let them do it. Set them up.
Yeah.
Give them the ability to do that, and that's what Kiki needs to do.
Something that I actually find really interesting about a Memory of Gabe, now that we've already touched upon it slightly, is the dual lane, Snoopy and Ionic, because they're obviously such an iconic dual lane, but we haven't really heard much about them recently. I think they've never come close to the level they were at during season 1, honestly. And I don't know what I expect from this dual lane, because we just haven't seen much. What do you guys think?
Well, Snoopy is the kind of player that can have some games off, and then he can absolutely pop off and carry a game on his own. But with the new lineup, and as we saw in the second game, it was really just, he was in the fights, he was in the game, but he wasn't the big playmaker for the team. Like, for example, we saw Barracuda carrying the games for, well, not carrying, but really showing up in the games for LG, and I don't think Snoopy is that kind of player.
Yeah, it's consistency for me. Yes, they have been together a long time. Snoopy and Ionic, second longest tenured duo lane in the league, if you don't count the time that they took off last season. Jeff and Barra are the only duo lane that has played together longer than Snoopy and Ionic. Consistency, again, is the big issue with Snoopy and Ionic. They're both great players in their own right. They're both, especially with Snoopy playing the hunter role, can go off and carry a game. It's kind of harder for Ionic to do that because he is a support player. But they both have that potential to do that. I just see they're not as consistent as the Sex Tank lane is, and they go quiet at times and disappear at times, and it really stops them from being in that discussion of, as far as their teams go in making these postseason events like Masters or Dreamhack.
Yeah, so that's what I wanted to add for the NA side of things.
I don't think so.
I think we pretty much covered everything. Still gotta ask you a question. I mean, so Smite Pro League gave their week 1 MVPs, Arkle for EU and Barracuda for NA. Just want to see if you guys agree with that. If you don't agree, who's your week 1 MVPs?
Well, I think I'm gonna go with. I think those are also yours, Fails and Cyclone, because they both seem to really deserve it. They had great performances in both of their games, both of their sets during week one.
I would, for the European side, it has to be Fails for me too, because he did, going back to the great stat line, 24, 7, and 36. He, oh yeah, that speaks for itself. But for NA, I was kind of torn between Cyclone Spin and keeping the MVP by Smite Pro Barracuda. And in the end, I think I would have to give it to Cyclone Spin as well.
So we're all in agreement. Fails and Cyclospin just played out of their minds this week. Really were able to help their team win games that nobody expected them to win. Fails and Dignitas Fails and Enix finding a split with Obey, and then ALG splitting with LG off the back of Cyclone Spin. So we're all in agreement. I just want to ask one more thing. If we had recorded last week, I think we could have made predictions before the week, before any of the games were played, on who we thought were going to make it to DreamHack. Since we weren't able to record last week, I want to ask predictions. Like, who do you see making it to DreamHack? After 1 week of play, who do you see making it to DreamHack?
Okay, so how many spots are there, right? 4 per region, I think?
No, 4 for EU. NA is only going to get 3. And then South America has a team. South America gets the last spot.
Okay, so for EU, I need to think about this real quick. I think the 2 teams I would definitely set for DreamHack are Dig and Obey. And I think the rest of the other 2 slots will be decided between Enix, Energy, and Rival. And right now, I think I would give them to Enix and Energy in that order.
So Enix 3rd and Energy 4th. Okay.
Yeah, but that is a really uncertain prediction, honestly.
And what about the NA teams?
Okay, so we're doing those right now as well. Good. I think in NA, the teams that are going to make it will be Luminosity, Allegiance, and Eager or Monkey Madness. I'm really not sure between those 2, but I think both have a chance. I think the top 2 will be Luminosity and Allegiance, and the 3rd spot will be decided between Eager and Monkey Madness.
Well, for me, on the European side of things, I actually have Enix for me as the top team, as we saw them split with Obey, who was thought to be the best team after their performance at Masters. But Enix really picking up those new players and still doing so well. I think they'll be the 1st place in EU, and closely following Obey and Dignitas for the 2nd and 3rd spot. And the 4th one is going to go to NRG still. They did split with Rival, but I think they had much better games than Rival. So that's the 4 for EU. And as for NA, Luminosity and Monkey Madness are the 2 teams I think are going to make it for sure. And the 3rd spot is between Allegiance and IMOG. I don't think Eager will make Valencia. And I think I'd have to give it to Allegiance, but as a 3rd spot.
Well, for me, the EU teams, I pretty much agree with what both of you have to say. I am going to say that Dignitas will wind up number one. Uh, Obey and Energy will be 2 and 3. To me, Rival or Enix will be number 4 based on the outcome of their matchup later on in the split. I think if Enix finds a 2-0, they obviously get into DreamHack. If Rival finds a 2-0, they're going to DreamHack. So to me, it just comes down to who wins that set. If they split, there's other factors. Say they do split, I do think Enix gets in at number 4 over Rival, just because I think Enix is a better team. In A, I really like Allegiance and LG. I think they're clearly the best two teams right now. I want to see what Gabe does before I make any other predictions. As I really like Gabe's potential. If Kiki, like we said, plays these set up gods and sets up the rest of his team, I think they can go a long way. But if Gabe struggles, I do look for E United to get in over Monkey Madness, simply because Monkey Madness is inconsistent. I see this E United squad, if they overcome the things that they need to work on, if I see them being able to make much more of their talent than anything else. So my top teams are ALG, LG, and E United for NA.
Okay, good. I think that about wraps it up for this week. We're gonna write those down, by the way, and whoever's wrong is gonna get laughed at. I promise you, even if it's me. But I think that's it for the end of this week, unless any of you have anything left to say.
I do want to ask you guys about your thoughts on the new god, Daji. As far as competitive stand goes, who do you think? Which jungler do you think plays her first? If she even is played in the jungle, who plays her first?
Okay, I think the first one to play her is gonna be Cubo. Somehow. I can't explain why. Just, I think he is gonna do it.
Nah, the first one's gonna be Skilly down.
Is he gonna feed on her?
Yeah, I'm in agreement with Psycho here. It's going to be Skeleton. If it's not Skeleton, it's probably going to be Weekend. We know Weekend likes that style of assassins. She kind of reminds me a lot of Circuit. So, and we know Weekend likes Circuit. So, to me, it's either Skeleton or Weekend. Cubo might play her, but I don't think he's the one that's going to play her first. If he plays her first, it's only because EU goes first in as far as the order of games.
Yeah, exactly.
That's if we do see her in the SPL. Because right now it doesn't seem like it.
Yeah, I'm still a bit unsure whether she's actually going to be considered good enough. I personally like her, but I don't like her in the sense that I think she's super good.
Well, she's fun, but not on Conquest. Like, the ultimate is weird.
The team comp has to be built around her. She can't really do the things she wants to do on her own. So I think in the right team comp she could work, but I see her being in that niche group of some kind of like Kali and Arachne. She can be played, but she's got to have the right team comp around her.
Yeah. And I kind of see EU as the region that is more likely to actually build a team comp like that around her, honestly.
If there was a team comp built around her, it would probably be a comp that it beats Burner, basically. Something along the lines of Ares and Xinchen, and then Daji on top of it.
Just play her with Morrigan. So you just have her ult twice.
Instead of double Hun Battle, you have a double Daji ult.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, but
all right, guys.
But Zeros has also played Morrigan this week, I think. See, it all comes together.
That's why Kivo plays her first, because Zero plays Morgan.
Exactly.
All right, I get you. I see you.
Okay, but I think with that we're done for this week, right? So, thank you all for watching or listening to us. Anyone who actually did. We hope to see you again next week. We will try to get another episode up at around the same time as this time around. If you want to be notified when this next episode gets up, then you can feel free to subscribe to us on YouTube or to follow us on SoundCloud if that is actually a thing. Is that a thing? Does anyone know?
I don't use SoundCloud.
Anyway, so if it is a thing, you might be able to also get notified there. We might also set up a Twitter account that you can follow. We'll notify you about that as well. But for now, that was it from us for this week. Any closing words from anyone?
If you like this, hit the like button, leave a comment down below. In any comment you want to add will help. Comments on how we can get better, comments on what you liked, what you didn't like. Everything's welcomed. We're here to hopefully have success and put this out every week. If not, thanks for listening.
Yeah.
Shout outs to DM and the boys. I really want to see if game against Flashpoint.
Yeah, that would be hilarious. So again, it was an honor to be here today with you guys as well. I want to thank you as well. And good night to you. Well, not to Sabo because it's like 3 p.m. where you live. But whatever. Good night.
Good night.
Good night.